Okay, you're live.
Sorry, make everybody jump. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Executive. My name is Councillor Paul Follows, Leader of the Council and Chair of the Executive for this meeting. The meeting is being held in the Council Chamber at the Buries in Godalming and being webcast live. And the agenda was published on the 9th. Supplement containing questions from members of the public and councillors, together with some prepared responses, was published on the 16th of December, which was yesterday. Can I have apologies for absence, Chris?
Thank you, Leader. Just confirm I've received no apologies.
And I think everybody's here. Excellent. All right. Item 2, the minutes of the meeting on 26th of November. Are all members of the Executive happy for me to sign the minutes? Thank you. Item 3, declarations. Any members, anything to declare? Other than being tired? Yes. No, seeing none. In which case we then move on to item 4. Bear with me just one moment while I get to the right place in my agenda. Questions from members of the public. The first question has been received from Mr. Steve Daly. The question has been published, as has the response. As Mr. Daly has joined us this evening. Mr. Daly, do you have any supplementary questions you'd like to raise with us? And would you like to come forward to any of the available seats with the microphone? And well, I can't promise we can answer it now, but we'll certainly take the question.
Okay, the supplementary question is quite a simple one, really. Was in the light of the response that you've given, which I accept, why was my question to full council in October rejected, stating it contained exempt information?
Thank you, Mr. Daly. I'm obviously not going to do that right here, right now, because I don't have all the available information to do that myself. We'll take that offline and we'll make sure that's published in an update to the minutes. Right, and then we move on to question 2, which is from Mr. Alex Page. I just want to confirm, is he with us online at all?
I don't see him with us, Chair.
Okay, in which case, Councillor Williams, I think the question was to you, and in the absence of Mr. Page, I don't know if we need to read the whole thing, but if there's any other comments you want to make.
No, I think it's covered by the written response. But obviously, if Mr. Page were present, I'd be very happy to try to answer any supplementaries.
Thank you. And there were trivial things that will bother me the whole meeting. Gemma, can you turn your name label the right way up? Thank you. Thank you. Right, in which case then we move to questions from members of the council, and we have a question from Councillor Maxine Gale. Can I just confirm, is Councillor Gale on the Zoom? I think she's at Whitley Parish Council this evening. Oh no, she is. She's there.
Yeah.
Councillor Gale, hello.
Hello.
Liz has got an answer to your question, I think, which has been published. Do you have any supplementary questions or comments, Maxine?
Yeah, just one really, Leader. I see that the Treasury management is a function undertaken by the Borough Council at their own cost. I don't think that answers whether the money is put onto deposit, because I would have thought the 5% would have covered the costs in doing so. I don't know. I'm just a bit confused with some of the answer. Thank you.
My understanding is that SIL sits in its own account. So even if it did accrue interest, it would only give more money into the SIL pot, which would have to then be used under the SIL regulations. But as we do have some finance officers in the room, are there any comments you'd like to make? Because I'm not sure the answer myself.
Yeah, I'll have to go away and check exactly how that actually operates. Candice, unfortunately, is not here with us tonight, so I'll come back to you.
And Maxine, you can be sure that if it's appropriate, if that applies, then because I know obviously where you're going with this, which is that if it's being held by the town or parish instead, and they could accrue the interest, I can assure you if it applies to Whitley, both Farnham and Godalming will be jumping on that like you've never seen.
Absolutely, Leader.
Thank you for that, Maxine. Right, in which case then we'll move on to item 6, which is updates from me and all the rest of the executive. A couple of updates from me. I just want to thank all of the officers who have arranged the now concluded corporate strategy stakeholder events. I'm sure others will mention them too. That I managed to get to 3 of the 4 of them, not the Farnham one, unfortunately, but all of them seem to be fantastically attended. We had lots of good discussions, and obviously we'll be having some feedback in the new year. Can I just say thank you to all of those officers who arranged those, managed them on the day, did all the catering and all of the other things to make those events actually work. And make them as successful as they were. The only other update I'm just going to give is that obviously on Monday we had the announcement from the government regarding the English Devolution Bill, which is the sort of convoluted way of talking about local government reorganisation. There was a white paper which was released on Monday, 118 pages. There are a number of things in there that are reasonable sounding. There are a few things in there that are contradictory with each other in terms of the status of these issues here in Waverley and in Surrey in general. There has also been a letter circulated by the relevant Minister of State from MHCLG this morning to leaders of councils, as well as a very hastily arranged meeting this morning that many leaders therefore couldn't get to. I managed to get to some of it. There are some questions that have been opened up this evening in regards to what is sort of track 2, which is effectively councils applying for various things. There are also some questions, therefore, about potential elections the scheduled elections in May 2025. So there will be a note coming to the executive this evening to discuss some of the questions that are being raised over the course of the day. I've been having those discussions, not just with the leader of Guildford, but with at least 6 other district and borough leaders over the course of the afternoon, and also with a handful of the MPs in Surrey. So there are some things we will be needing to readily move on in the course of the next couple of weeks once we've processed the detail. In which case, I'll now go round, starting with Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Leader. Not an update, and hopefully not a prediction, although I fear, given the weather, it might be. I just want to thank in advance those officers who are making themselves available to respond to any incident over the holiday period. In particular, any incident is the first thing, but I guess the ones that probably are most likely if the weather turns against us, any environmental flooding or similar. So in advance, thank you very much.
I'm just going to go round rather than in alphabetical order, starting from this end this time. Councillor Keele.
Thank you, Leader. Nothing in particular. I just wanted to echo your thanks to all of our officers and executive members for the excellent sessions that we've had on the corporate strategy. I think it's really demonstrated our commitment to the priorities that we've set. So thank you all.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
No update from me today.
Thank you. Councillor Mirrlees.
Again, thanks to, I'm in the middle of the Thriving Communities Commission, trawling through all the fundraising and the fund applications, and thanks to Sam and all the people who've worked so hard to get those documents are ready for us to look at. Thanks very much, and happy Christmas.
Yes, I'm sure you and Sam had a very fun day dealing with that today. Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo my thanks for the arranging of the corporate strategy. I had the Prosperous Borough, which was at Farnham UCA. It was a brilliant event. It really was. It was very well attended. We had a group of people from all sorts of businesses, and they were really enthusiastic, really energetic, and I think it showed the potential that we've got in this borough. And the amazing commitment as well of businesses to the borough as well. So I'm looking forward to the next steps with that group of people. We have previously had meetings of the local economic advisory forum, and we're very much hoping that information that we gathered from the workshops will be feeding into that and producing some really exciting results, I hope, going forward. And speaking of exciting results, we had the new NPPF, which was published, and it probably hasn't gone without notice that our housing number in the previous local plan was 590. The government, the Conservative government, then increased it to 710, and now it's gone up to a whopping 1,481. So That would be if we cannot get that number revised by government, that would be a 50% increase in population over the next 20 years in the borough of Waverley. So it also is about 4 times the average house building that we've had as well over the past 20 years as well. So it is a phenomenal increase, and members will be aware of the constraints that we've got within the borough. 3/4 of the borough covered with the Surrey Hills National Landscape. So that is obviously highly protected, as it should be, under national planning policy. So I always find it quite perverse that we have to prove to the government that we have hard constraints. You know, you would think that a national landscape which has been, which they've set, yes, or set by Natural England, would be something that they were very aware of, and it wouldn't be beyond the wit of man to include that within some housing calculation, but that is not the case. That is our number, and obviously it's going to put a tremendous pressure on the planning department. And we also have, and within the NPPF, you know, we did ask the government if they would do something to allow us to have some kind of levers to be able to get developers to build out the approximately 6,000 permissions that we've got in planning permissions and also within local plan allocations. They have set up something where there will be a formal need for developers to advise us when they start applications, and also to when an annual progress report. To be honest, our officers do that anyway, really, so they already check. It will be nice that they might not have to chase so much, but that's probably the only difference that's going to make. The one thing that is quite interesting is that they will give local planning authorities, or they're going to bring forward measures, so it'd be interesting to see what they look like, that local planning authorities will have the power to decline future planning applications made by developers who fail to build out earlier planning permissions granted on land in the authority's area at a reasonable rate. That's a bit like the name and shame thing that the last government was suggesting. So, but it will be interesting to see what those measures are and how we decide what reasonable will be in legal terms. And I'm sure there's going to be loads of case law on that going forward. I can't really see how that's going to be at the moment. The other thing, obviously, again, is infrastructure. Infrastructure is mentioned, and they're talking about water infrastructure specifically, but at this moment in time, whilst they recognise that it's in a critical state, there doesn't seem to be any kind of mechanism to address that. So, you know, we had in Cranley, only this week, we've had people without water for 4 or 5 days on and off in an area near to me, where they have had about 11, 12 bursts. Every time they turn it on again, they'd had another burst. So, you know, those people were probably without water for about 5 days with it on and off. And we've also had as well in Alfold recently at the end of November, when we had the heavy rain, then we had again sewage flooding as well in Alfold, and that's a common occurrence. So it won't be difficult to imagine that residents will find the prospect of 1,481 houses per annum across the borough a little bit difficult to swallow, with the water and sewage infrastructure issues, the road issues, the electricity issues, and also Farnham members will be aware that, you know, the lack of secondary school places in Farnham as well. So, you know, we are facing a really, really difficult period of time. We've been given the targets. It's also quite clear that despite the offer of the 300 new planning officers, that is not going to touch the sides. The RTPI have been saying that we need about 25,000 more planning officers. So you can see the extent of the issue, and that is a crisis that's happening. And it won't go without notice that we've got a request for additional money for the planning department later on in this meeting. And, you know, it's going to be very, very difficult if we are faced with also lots of speculative applications, and if we refuse them, then there will be the additional cost of appeals. So we will be doing our best. We've also got a skills shortage. We know that. We know that then there needs to be approximately another 250,000 construction workers is being predicted. So again, it is difficult to see, faced with these huge challenges, how that number will be achieved. We will need to do a Greenbelt review. However, Again, people will be aware most of our green belt is covered by national landscape anyway, by the Surrey Hills. So we have only a very tiny bit of land which we can look at, review, and possibly find these grey belt sites with all these abandoned petrol stations that the government keeps talking about, which I don't think they realise what rural green belt and possibly grey belt sites are. We could always build on previously developed land in the green belt anyway, so that again is not a huge difference. It is looking again, you know, that we can see perhaps that green belt itself will be put under huge pressure. So I really don't have an awful lot of good news for members, really. We are facing such a challenging time. I would ask you to be really supportive of our planning department, because they are going to face a tough time as well. And, you know, we will be doing our best. We're doing our new local plan. The evidence that we've gathered so far is not evidence it's evidence that we can use going forward. So that isn't something we need to redo, but obviously we do need to look at looking at far more sites and looking to see whether or not there is any possibility of being able to accommodate that number. We will have a duty to cooperate with our neighbours on that point as well. But you know, it will be extremely difficult, and the team will be working very hard. It will affect the timetable of the local plan. There will be no doubt delay, and obviously officers are working hard to see what that will actually look like. So that's my update for today, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. It'll be interesting to see whether, if we throw things out because a developer hasn't previously built, whether that will have any impact on things like housing land supply and the tilted balance. I mean, it sounds like we're going to be having issues, but left, right, and centre on this one, aren't we? So
we're just going to be in a permanent state of tilted balance.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I thought would be the case. And again, for anybody watching this or any residents that have any interest in planning policy and how we do things, this is a reminder that the government set planning policy, and we are the recipients and enablers of that policy on the ground, which is incredibly difficult for us to actually achieve with all of the constraints that we have. Right, Councillor Merriweather, I'm assuming this time we're going to have a finance update that's not the gloomiest in the room, based on Liz's update.
Yeah, it's not because it's any lighter, it's because it's up against tough competition, isn't it? Look, substantively, I've got very little to add to what I said 3 weeks ago. We are waiting for the finance settlement. We've been preparing as best we can for the worst. And we expect the finance settlement to be announced at the back end of this week, just as everybody else is packing up for the holiday season. Our own finance teams are going to be buckling down for the next 2 months as we digest the crumbs, if there are any, that we're left, and how we're going to cut our cloth, which is in financial terms just as impossible as some of the other nonsense that we're given to deal with, I'm afraid. So stand by. I just want to say, happy holiday season to everybody, but my thoughts are going to be with our finance team, who are going to be spending it, I'm afraid, working extremely hard.
It's just worth, of course, reflecting that the Treasury will bin that, the Treasury and MHCLG will bin that out the door pretty much as they go for the holidays. And we're expecting this at the end of this week, and that'll be
it'll be tossed in the mail when they're on their way to their holiday parties.
Yeah, and of course, then every district and borough and county in the country is going to have to sit and actually process that pretty much before they get to go home for Christmas. And we had some hope that with the change of government that some of these fundamentals might change, but ultimately nothing on that is any different than it used to be. So on that note, Councillor Williams.
If you don't want me to dampen spirits any further by talking about climate change, or by talking about the changes that are occurring in terms of waste strategy and the response of Surrey, the unhelpful response of Surrey County Council, then I will, for the moment, keep my counsel and just wish everybody a very all the best wishes for the season.
I think it's fair to say there's going to be a fairly large number of subjects that we're talking to Surrey about in the new year. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you. Hopefully this won't dampen things. I just wanted to mention that the government is consulting on reforming the right to buy and the future of social housing rent policy, and Waverley Borough Council will of course be responding in due course. And happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Janet. Councillor Rivers.
Thank you, Leader. Members will know that we're in the middle of a government inspection. The regulator of social housing is looking closely at us, the results of which will be with us at the end of February. And I really want to thank our housing team, top to bottom, bottom to top, who are working incredibly hard on this, as well as doing their normal jobs. So what do we do now? I will echo what Annalisa Howson has said. We should enjoy the Christmas break and then come back in the new year, ready to continue working on our action plans to improve services and demonstrate how we meet standards. Terrific. February. We'll show them.
Thank you, everyone. Just one couple of bits to conclude with. Firstly, can I just say thank you to Rochelle Tapping, who leaves us at the end of December, who is often to my right, but not today, obviously, who has, I think, been a tremendous support to the legal function and certainly to us as executive members. I mean, we've certainly there had a reliable person that we could ask, in some cases, when I speak particularly of myself and Councillor Williams, some pretty exotic legal queries over the course of the last couple of months, all of which have been answered, you know, really swiftly and with a lot of detail that's been really supportive and helpful. So in whatever she's doing next, I want to wish her all the best, and also just take this opportunity to welcome Claire, who is here with us now as our Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Thank you.
Good evening. Right, to the agenda. Item 7, review of actions from Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Let me just bear with me just to make sure there are none, and in fact there are none. In which case, then we'll move on to item 8, which is the Afghanistan Relocation Assistance Programme, and that's the last time I'll be saying that in full. It's ARAP, and other refugee schemes support from Waverley Borough Council. So as you're aware, I'm sure there have been a number of different refugee schemes for various different refugee groups. Certainly, I've had some issues with some of this because in publishing, this is the former government, in publishing lots of different schemes for different national groups, I always thought there was actually a little bit of discrimination going on because effectively some groups had more than others. You were saying that some nationalities or ethnic groups would do this or that or the other, and it made it very difficult. There is also, I think, a couple of things that we also have to remember. I mean, in my capacity as the Armed Forces Champion for Waverley and somebody who works a lot with the military, we have Afghan refugees who supported our armed forces in combat operations or as translators who very much put themselves and their families at risk to do so, in large part were then abandoned by the government of this country in terms of getting them out. We had a foreign secretary at the time who wasn't even really sure where Afghanistan was. And of course, Syria, where we had a number of refugees who had come from Syria over the past few years, is obviously now a situation in some flux. And I think it's probably just worth remembering that although the Assad regime has fallen now in Syria, that will probably create some instability in the next few years that will end up with refugees for other reason, probably in due course. So the Home Office have now launched a scheme called Find Your Own Accommodation. The purpose of this is to try and unify some of these positions, particularly with ARAP. But the thing I'm particularly pleased about is that they're finally engaging the Ministry of Defence in the use of their unused housing in order to bring that to bear in this discussion, which is something that I and this council and half a dozen other councils particularly have been calling for years. So I'm incredibly pleased to see that there is now some link up with the MOD, particularly for Afghan refugees, because there is obviously a military connection with that, and I think it's obviously very appropriate. So the recommendations tonight particularly are to support an additional ARAP family through that Find Your Own Accommodation pathway, to delegate to the Assistant Director for Community Services in consultation with the Strategic Director and Lead Member on any further approaches, and a slightly modified version of recommendation 3, which is to request that the resettlement team team leader inform me as leader of the council of any refugee moving into the borough under any of these resettlement schemes, and which is in the role of my role of armed forces champion. So we've got an idea as an executive what sort of level of refugee influx we've got into the borough. Any comments on any of on this item? Right, in which case, seeing none, I shall move to the recommendations. Can I have all those in favour of the recommendations, please show? Thank you very much, everyone. In which case then moving to community infrastructure levy enforcement policy, and I will now hand over to Councillor Townsend to introduce.
Thank you, Leader. I'm not going to say much on this. The policy is included within the agenda, and this is just coming forward to approve the adoption of that policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? Hopefully a very clear report though, in which case I'll take the recommendations. Can I have all those in favour of the recommendation, please show? Thank you very much, everyone. That's again unanimous. And then moving on to item 11, the supplementary funds request, planning officer, agency staff costs, etc. Councillor Townsend.
Yes, I think I said probably enough about the position of planning officers earlier in my update. Just to say that this is obviously requesting some additional funding to cover the costs of contractors and also to cover the cost of some planning inquiries that are needed. So I think it's fairly self-explanatory, unless anybody's got any questions they'd like to ask.
I'm going to ask you a question I know the answer to, just because I think we need to say it. Are we allowed to recover all of the costs from the processing of planning applications, Councillor Townsend?
Not at present, Leader.
Any other comments, anyone? No, in which case, I'm just going to double check. In which case, are we all happy to accept the recommendations in item 10? Can I have all those in favour, please show? Thank you very much. That is again unanimous. We have no reason to exclude press and public in item 11, in which case I believe I can close the meeting at 19:26.